You are listening to episode number 182, number 182, número 182. Hey amigos y amigas, welcome to English Made Simple. My name is Milena from EnglishMadeSimple.net, EnglishMadeSimple.net. How are ya? How you guys doing? Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing fantastic, okay? I'm really excited about today's episode. Today's episode is a bit different. It's really cool. We are going to be chatting with Eduardo from Venezuela. Well, anyway, Eduardo will explain where he's exactly from. But I'm excited about today's episode because if you guys remember last episode and the episode before, I was looking for some survivors of IELTS. IELTS is this awful English exam that we have to do. Some of us really have to do it if they are planning to move overseas for study or just to live overseas. Now, Eduardo is a survivor of IELTS, so that's pretty cool. So that's exciting as well. And Eduardo was kind enough to share some tips with us. He's sharing his experience with IELTS and he's sharing his experience of moving to Australia. He's moved his whole family to Australia. So before we begin the chat with Eduardo, I just want to let you guys know that there won't be a transcript to this episode. I'm just going to be taking notes and I'm going to post the notes to the show on the website. Just to let you know in advance, alright? And also, I want you to listen to the end of the episode because I'm going to be sharing a couple of more tips with you. Eduardo has shared a couple of more tips with you guys, but we didn't have time to cover those during our chat. So I'm just going to add that in at the end of the episode. Now, again, I need to let you know that if you're planning to move overseas, like if you're planning to come to Australia or if you're already living in Australia, I have prepared a guide to help you with your life in Australia. It's gonna be easier. Alright, so if you go to EnglishMadeSimple.net/guide, GUIDE, you can simply download that guide and it is for you if you are planning to come to Australia or you're already living in Australia, right? So just wanted to mention that as well. Now, I think we are ready. We are ready to chat with Eduardo, okay? Let's get cracking. Welcome Eduardo to this little EMS community. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today. And I know that you are one of the survivors of IELTS. And that's the reason that I wanted to speak with you today. That's the reason I wanted to have a quick chat to you because I know that you can share some tips with my listeners, with the EMS community. And I know you can kind of like encourage them to keep going. Okay. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself first, maybe to share your story with us, like where you're from, how long have you been living in Australia, because now I understand you live in Australia. So I'll just pass the mic over to you and you can start talking about yourself.
Thank you, Milena. Thank you for having me. As you said, I'm from Venezuela. Well, actually, I was born in Ecuador, but my parents moved to Venezuela when I was just 3 years old. So I feel more like Venezuelan person than Ecuadorian. And I have been living here in Australia about 5 years now. So it has been a nice experience. I am one of the IELTS survivors. I had to say I failed the exam 4 times. So Yeah.
It's normal, isn't it?
I
It's normal.
I don't know if it's normal, but yeah, it was very frustrating for me. Uh, well, when I started all of this, I didn't have any English, just the basic
Mhm,
English from school. So I had to start practically from the beginning.
mhm.
So the first time, in my case, listening was always the headache. So yeah, I started, just taking some classes with teachers in back in Venezuela.
Mhm.
And well, these teachers were focused in IELTS because I consider that IELTS is more tests with techniques more than English. Of course,
Yeah,
it's English,
I think
but
so too. Mhm.
it's an exam that is based more in techniques. So any people learning about IELTS, I think they need to know about the techniques.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a little bit of my background with IELTS.
So so you did the IELTS in Venezuela because you had to do it for visa to come to Australia. Is that right? For the permanent
Yes,
resident
correct.
visa?
So yeah, one of the requirements to apply for the permanent resident visa was to have the IELTS. So
Mm-hmm.
I started the process like long time ago, about wow, 9 years or something like that ago. So when I started, actually, I needed 6 on each band. And yes, so the
You
first
needed
time,
6. Wow.
yes, 6, which was quite easy. But yeah, as I said before, in my case, listening was always the headache. So the first time I got the 6 in all of them,
Yeah.
sorry, in everything but listening. I got
Oh.
5.5 in listening. So,
Oh.
so yeah, um, yeah, that's the thing.
So yeah, so this is when was that? When did you do IELTS? Because that was the requirement. That has changed. You know, I remember like 6 years ago, maybe they needed a 5 to come to Australia, but you mentioned the 6 in all disciplines.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly what year was, but if I had been here for 5 years, I guess it was around
Mm.
9 years
Oh, okay.
ago. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it was 6, then they increased the note to 7.
Mm.
Then one of these immigrant agents, they recommended to apply for, how do they call it, sponsorship visa
Mm-hmm.
with Victoria sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to apply for that one, I just needed 6.5.
Okay.
So, but the thing is that you need the score in all, in listening,
Yeah.
reading, writing. So it's all the 4, which
Mm.
makes the exam a little bit more trickier.
Yeah, it does. All 4 disciplines, and as you said, when you said IELTS is a technique, it is all about the skill, and knowing the questions and um, understanding the format of the test.
That's correct.
Like it doesn't teach you English; it teaches you how to answer those questions. Really.
Yes, that's correct. Because actually at the beginning, when I was just learning about IELTS, I was scared about the speaking because I had never, I never had the opportunity of speaking with someone in English. So for me, that was the scaring part.
Yes.
But after practicing, practically the first part is you memorize what you are going to say because it's like introduce yourself, what's your name, what do you do, and yeah.
Mhm.
So the first at least 5 to 10 minutes is just you can learn by heart what you're going to say,
Yeah.
and so yeah. But in the end, as I said, listening.
Yeah, listening, right. Listening
Yes.
it is tricky. I tried to do one without preparing for IELTS. I remember when I tried to do it myself, I was like, oh yeah, of course I understand English. I can, I listen to English all the time, but it's not, it is actually a skill to do listening
Yes.
IELTS.
Yes.
Like you do need to practice a lot. You do need to do all of the past questions and to ensure a good score. I was gonna say is so. What would you advise to somebody now doing IELTS or preparing for IELTS? Like, what do you think can help somebody to get the right score? How can they start preparing for IELTS?
Well, I think that the first thing is to find out what your weakness is. Probably not everyone fail with the listening. Probably, for example, I have a friend that actually his English is very good, but he always fail in the reading, which is supposed to be the easiest.
Yes.
So for some reason, he English is perfect, but I don't know, for some reason, he always failed in reading. So the first thing I think people need to realize what the weakness is. So probably writing, the grammar part. Yeah, in my case, it was the listening. But yeah, I will say that the first part is to seek what is your weakness. And the second thing is, I will say, to seek help from someone who is familiar from the exam. Because probably you can practice listening. Yeah, it's easier to practice reading, probably, but writing and speaking, you need someone to advise to correct you, probably grammatical expressions that you are mispronunciations and things like that. So yeah, I will say that seek for help.
Yes, seek for help for sure. Like
Yes.
that definitely can speed up the whole process for you. Like if you get help from somebody to give you feedback, because that's really important. Like if you're writing or if you need to improve writing, you do need feedback from somebody to tell you if you're on the right track, if you're
Yes,
doing it right or not.
that's correct. Because as we said, it's just technique. So sometimes for example, the essays, they have like a specific format and they start like at the beginning with just like an introduction of the topic, then just few words to complement it. So if you write more than, I think it's 300 words, I have forgotten, it's not good. If you write
250,
less than that,
I think, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. If you write less, it's not good as well either. So yeah, seek for advice.
And you know what? I want to ask you, like, I know, I understand that you're working in Australia now. Do you think IELTS has helped you at all to prepare for work when you have to work?
Not really. Not really. No, so when I arrived in Australia, I thought my English was like intermediate level, like 6.5. But yeah, when you face, and especially in my case, it was the first time facing an English speaking country. So yeah, the different accents that you find people from different countries is not only a matter of English, it's a matter of understanding different accents like, Chinese, well, and especially in Melbourne that there are
Yes. In Melbourne,
people from everywhere. Yeah, so IELTS probably nothing to do with this. Probably writing, yes, it helps me when you need to send emails and, make a report and things like that. It will help you, but yeah, the only way to face it is to speak it and to, find someone who can, at least you can practice. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you have a friend who is kind of in intermediate level, just try and don't be afraid of making mistake, of make pronunciation mistakes and things like that. So yeah.
What about listening, like to Australian accent?
Oh my God, I'm still dealing with it.
Still dealing with it? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, after 5 years, I'm still, trying to understand some Australian people.
Yes, I was just watching TV just before we met, and I was watching somebody speak on TV. He's from Queensland. Now, Queensland is another state in Australia, and they have a strong Australian accent.
Oh,
And,
yes.
and they really extend their vowels, and they sound different to Melbournians or the Adelaideans, like they sound really different. But yeah, even to me now, after 10 years, I sometimes really struggle understanding Australian accent when it's really, really heavy Australian accent. But there are many
Yes.
different accents. I want to point that
Yes. So in my case, for example, people from India, oh my God,
out.
at the beginning was like, I couldn't understand.
Yes. Yeah, you're dealing with people from different countries, so obviously you're dealing with different accents, especially at work. And
Correct.
I remember when I was working a long time ago, I remember working with different people from different cultures and backgrounds, and it was rare to hear an Australian accent, actually.
That's correct.
In the end, yeah. But anyway, so I know that, so yeah, now you live in Australia, and would you advise your friends to come to Australia? Do you like it? That's what I'm trying to say. Do you like it there? Do you like Melbourne?
Oh yeah, it's a nice country, beautiful city. I'm talking about Melbourne. What I like in here is that diverse diversity.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the weather is nice, even though it changes every minute.
It's not
I
like
love it.
Venezuela.
Yeah, and what I like from Australia is that people are very patient. If they don't understand, they try to help you, or if you don't get something, and
Mhm.
you can freely say sorry, I don't understand, and generally they will try to help you. Different. So, for example, I had the opportunity to be in the USA before coming here, and in USA people are very
Impatient?
impatient. Yeah, they don't like if you don't speak properly. They immediately they say, okay, I don't know what you're saying. It's in here. No, in here, at least Melbourne. I have lived only in Melbourne only.
Mhm.
I don't know Sydney and other cities, but at least in
Mhm.
Melbourne, people are very friendly and they are always willing to help you. And it's something that I really enjoy of living here.
Yeah. Have you tried different cuisine, like different food? Because Melbourne is, as you said, very diverse, and they have all sorts of food from all parts of the world. Have you tried any food that you haven't tried before, like the Thai food or something like
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Oh, that's something very, because back in Venezuela, we don't have that variety of different flavors. So
Mm-hmm.
I have tried Indian cuisine and yeah, Thailandese,
Thai, we say Thai, yes.
Thai food, yeah, Vietnamese,
Yes.
all those kind of combinations, and they are very delicious.
Mm-hmm. When
Yeah.
I went to visit Chile, I remember especially I missed this food, like different cuisine that you can choose. Oh, I feel like eating Indian today, or I feel like eating Thai food today. Like um, you don't get that. I guess you don't get that diversity from other countries. If you live in other countries, you don't get to try different foods.
Yes.
So my question was, would you recommend your friends, for example, to come to Australia?
Uh, yes, of course. Well, I consider that that's something very personal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's a beautiful country. Yes, it is. But on the other hand, especially if you're coming from South America,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Australia is like going to the moon, so it's like too far. So
That's the only disadvantage.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the only disadvantage that friends will tell you, oh, why are you living in Australia? It's too far. So,
It's at
and
the end of the world.
tickets are very expensive. So it's like exactly. So be prepared if especially if you're a family person,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
be prepared to, yeah, exactly. It's something that in my case, well, I think probably, I don't know, your listeners know that in Venezuela, the situation at the moment
Mm-hmm.
is not so good. So in my case, it was like a B plan. I never planned like moving to Australia. This was my B plan, and unfortunately, I had to apply it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had to leave. Yes.
Yes.
It was kind of same in my situation as well. My dad decided to move the whole family because the economic situation was really bad. Serbia
Yes.
back in the 90s, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, we came to New Zealand. New Zealand is
It's,
another country. It's really beautiful, beautiful country. But Australia has more opportunities
yes, exactly.
for
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you are in the IT. I think in IT there are plenty of jobs. So
Yeah.
yeah.
IT, mining, construction. It's very active here in Australia. The
Yes.
construction industry.
Yep. Yep.
Have you come across any snakes?
No.
Have you seen a kangaroo yet?
Kangaroos, yeah, I have seen some kangaroos around, but thankfully nor spiders nor snakes. Yeah, uh, yeah. Thankfully, I haven't.
Thankfully, yes.
Yeah.
I have a friend in Queensland. Well, that's a tropical state, so you get to see all sorts of things. And when you get to travel with family to Queensland, maybe you will see some big spiders that
Oh,
these spiders don't exist in Victoria State or South Australia. But in Queensland, you get to see snakes, pythons, I think they have,
oh,
and which are like, I wouldn't say friendly, but they're not venomous. And people do have them in backyards, things like that.
oh,
He
really?
sent me a photo. My friend sent me a photo of a snake in neighbor's backyard. He goes, "Oh, look at this! Look at my pet," or something like that. I was like, "What? That's crazy!" But yeah, I haven't seen a snake. I think it's too cold for snakes in Melbourne.
Yeah, correct. I think so. Yeah, thankfully. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eduardo, for joining me today and for sharing your story as well, for talking about IELTS. You're the real survivor of IELTS and a winner as well.
Yes.
And I'm sure that your story will, encourage other listeners, encouraged by students as well who are about to do IELTS. It's going to really encourage them to keep going and not give up.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
main message.
That's something important. Don't give up. Keep trying. I know that is very disappointing. After 3, 4 times,
Mhm.
you say, "Oh, probably I won't do it." But no,
Yeah.
don't give up. Keep trying. Keep trying. And
Hmm.
yeah, um, IELTS is just a requirement. It has nothing
Hmm.
to do with English. So
Yeah.
don't get disappointed.
It's learning the skill of IELTS. Yeah, to
That's correct.
pass.
All
All
right,
right.
Milena,
Well,
thank you for having me. All what you do is very remarkable.
mhm,
So thank you so much. I know that is a good material for people studying English.
mhm.
Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for your time and effort.
thank you. Thank you. Nice to have you here. And there we have it, boys and girls. That was our chat with Eduardo. I hope you enjoyed that chat. He shared quite a lot with regards to IELTS and also with his experience of living overseas in Australia. All right, so I just wanted to mention those last two tips that we didn't have time to cover in our chat. Tip number one was, this is related to the speaking component of the exam. In the speaking part of the exam, remember, don't be afraid to make stuff up. You can invent something. If there was an answer that required you to think for quite a long time, maybe you don't have experience with something, you've never visited a museum before, and the question is asking you to talk about a museum. So just make something up, that's fine to do. There's no wrong or right answer per se, but just make something up. Just imagine if you were in a museum and start talking about that. So that was tip number one, was just to not be afraid to make stuff up, okay? And tip number two that Eduardo wanted to share with you guys is, sometimes we have to write things that, maybe we don't necessarily agree with those topics. It goes against our beliefs. Like, for example, I'm going to use Eduardo's example. He mentioned a question, for example, regarding kids playing outside. So what do you think about kids playing outside? Is this good for kids or bad for kids? So I'm just paraphrasing at the moment. But imagine if that was the question and you always teach your kids not to play outside, okay? But for this question, maybe there are more reasons to include for playing outside. Maybe there are more reasons to include for kids to be playing outside. Well, there are more advantages for kids to be playing outside. So sometimes we have to kind of go against our beliefs and against our feelings sometimes. So maybe opt for the answer that gives you the most reasons. Okay, so that was in the writing part of the exam. Excellent! I hope that makes sense, amigos y amigas. Now, before we finish, don't forget to download the free guide at englishmadesimple.net/guide. Okay, this is for people who are planning to come to Australia or who are already in Australia. Okay, I'm sharing some tips with you guys on how you can quickly settle in. Great! Thank you for joining me today. Thanks for listening to this episode of English Made Simple. You've been an amazing audience. You've been jamming with Milena from English Made Simple. Until next time, hasta la próxima! Reasons. Okay, so that was in the writing part of the exam. Excellent! I hope that makes sense, amigos y amigas. Now, before we finish, don't forget to download the free guide at englishmadesimple.net/guide. Okay, this is for people who are planning to come to Australia or who are already in Australia. Okay, I'm sharing some tips with you guys on how you can quickly settle in. Great! Thank you for joining me today. Thanks for listening to this episode of English Made Simple. You've been an amazing audience. You've been jamming with Milena from English Made Simple. Until next time, hasta la próxima!